You already know sugar is bad for you. You've known it for years. You've read the articles, you've seen the documentaries, you've made the promises to yourself. Starting Monday, no more sugar. And then Monday comes, and by Tuesday afternoon you're standing in the kitchen, eating something you swore you wouldn't touch. And the worst part? You're not even that hungry. You don't even fully want it, but you eat it anyway. And then you feel guilty, and then you feel weak, and then you tell yourself you just need more willpower. But here is the truth that nobody is telling you. This has absolutely nothing to do with willpower. What's happening inside your brain when you eat sugar is so powerful, so chemically precise, that it mirrors the same neurological process as cocaine addiction. I'm not being dramatic. The science says so. And once you understand what's actually going on, everything changes. Welcome back. If you're watching this, there's a good chance you've had that exact experience I just described. The cycle of craving, eating, guilt, and repeat. And if that's you, I want you to know something important before we go any further. You are not weak. You are not lazy. You are not lacking discipline. You are up against one of the most sophisticated biological traps ever created, and it was engineered, quite literally, to make you fail. Today we're going to go deep. We're going to look at what sugar actually does to your brain on a chemical level, why your body fights so hard against you when you try to quit, why the food industry has deliberately exploited these mechanisms for decades, and what you can do with this knowledge to finally start breaking free. This isn't a diet video. I'm not going to give you a meal plan or tell you to swap candy bars for rice cakes. This is about understanding the enemy so clearly that it loses its power over you. So let's get into it. Your brain on sugar. To understand why you can't stop eating sugar, you first need to understand what happens inside your brain the moment sugar hits your tongue, and it starts faster than you think, before you even swallow. The second sugar makes contact with the taste receptors in your mouth. A signal fires instantly to your brain's reward center, a region called the nucleus accumbens. This is the same area activated by nicotine, alcohol, and yes, cocaine. Your brain responds by releasing a flood of dopamine, the chemical that produces feelings of pleasure, satisfaction, and reward. And in that moment, your brain doesn't just feel good. It records the experience, it tags it, it files it away as something worth doing again and again and again. Now here's where it gets interesting. Dopamine isn't actually the feeling of pleasure itself. Dopamine is the feeling of wanting. It's the chemical of anticipation, of craving. And sugar is extraordinarily good at hijacking this system. Studies conducted at Princeton University found that rats given intermittent access to sugar showed all the hallmarks of dependency: binging, withdrawal symptoms, anxiety when the sugar was removed, and intense cravings even after long periods of abstinence. These are not the behaviors of an animal that simply enjoys something sweet. These are the behaviors of addiction. And before you think, well, I'm not a rat, consider this. The human brain, particularly the reward pathway, functions in a remarkably similar way. Neuroimaging studies in humans have shown that looking at sugary food, not even eating it, just looking at it, lights up the same regions of the brain as an addict looking at their drug of choice. The craving starts before a single calorie enters your body. The blood sugar roller coaster. Beyond the brain, sugar creates a deeply destabilizing physical cycle in your body that manufactures cravings on a biological schedule. Understanding this cycle is one of the most important things you can do for your health, and almost nobody explains it clearly enough. When you eat sugar or refined carbohydrates, your blood glucose rises quickly. Your pancreas responds by releasing insulin, the hormone that escorts glucose into your cells for energy. If you've eaten a lot of sugar, the spike is dramatic, and the insulin response is equally dramatic. Your blood sugar drops, sometimes quite sharply, and here is where the trap is sprung. When blood sugar drops, your brain interprets it as an emergency, not a mild inconvenience, an emergency. Low blood glucose is, from an evolutionary standpoint, a threat to survival. So your brain triggers hunger signals, stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline start to rise, your mood drops, your concentration falters, you feel irritable and anxious, and you develop an intense, almost urgent desire for fast energy, which means sugar and simple carbohydrates. Your body isn't asking for a salad. It's demanding fuel, and it wants it immediately, so you eat more sugar. Blood sugar spikes again. Insulin floods in again. Blood sugar crashes again. The craving returns, and the cycle repeats itself with terrifying consistency, day after day, meal after meal, year after year. Many people live their entire adult lives inside this loop without ever understanding that the hunger they feel mid-afternoon, the irritability before meals, the desperate need for something sweet after dinner, none of it is a character flaw. It is a predictable, chemically driven, physiological response that your body has been trained into. How the food industry made it worse. Now let's talk about something that doesn't get nearly enough attention. The deliberate, calculated, scientifically engineered effort by the processed food industry to make sugar as addictive as possible. This isn't a conspiracy theory. It's documented history. In the 1970s and 1980s, as research began emerging that linked dietary fat to heart disease, the food industry, facing a crisis, made a pivotal decision. They reduced fat in products and replaced it with sugar because food without fat tastes terrible, and sugar was the cheapest, most effective way to make it palatable again. Low-fat yogurt, reduced-fat salad dressings, healthy breakfast cereals, all of them loaded with sugar to compensate for the removed fat. But it went further than that. Food scientists, and this is their actual job title, were employed specifically to find what they called the bliss point of each product. The bliss point is the precise combination of sugar, salt, and fat that produces maximum craving and minimum satisfaction. They were designing food to make you want more before you'd even finished what was in front of you. Former food industry insiders, including those who worked at major corporations like Kraft and Coca-Cola, have gone on record describing how they studied neurological responses to food formulations, optimized textures for craving, and engineered products with the explicit goal of overriding the body's natural fullness signals. And the marketing that accompanied these products was equally sophisticated. Sugar was tied to emotion, to childhood, to celebration, to comfort. Every birthday cake, every holiday treat, every reward given to a child for good behavior. These associations were cultivated deliberately and strategically. By adulthood, sugar wasn't just food, it was comfort, it was love, it was reward, it was a coping mechanism. And the industry knew that the deeper the emotional association, the more resistant people would be to ever giving it up. The emotional eating layer. Speaking of emotion, let's talk about the psychological layer of sugar dependency, because for many people this is the most powerful layer of all, and it's the one that's hardest to address. Stress is one of the primary triggers for sugar cravings, and the reason is deeply rooted in your brain's chemistry. When you're stressed, your cortisol levels rise. Cortisol increases appetite and specifically increases cravings for high-energy, high-calorie foods. Exactly the foods your ancient survival brain thinks you'll need to deal with the threat in front of you. The fact that the threat is a difficult meeting at work rather than a predator in the wild doesn't matter to the part of your brain managing this response. Stress means danger. Danger means fuel. Fuel means sugar. And then there's the serotonin connection. Sugar temporarily boosts serotonin, the neurotransmitter associated with mood, calm, and well-being. For people who are anxious, depressed, lonely, or simply exhausted, a hit of sugar genuinely does provide a brief moment of emotional relief. The problem is that it's brief, and when it fades, not only does the original emotion return, but it often comes back harder, accompanied by guilt and the shame of having given in again. This emotional spiral is one of the cruelest parts of the sugar trap, because the very thing you reach for to feel better ultimately makes you feel worse. Many people use sugar the way others use alcohol, as a tool for emotional regulation. It quiets anxiety. It rewards hard work. It fills quiet moments that feel too empty. It provides stimulation when life feels dull. And until the underlying emotional needs are addressed, no amount of dietary willpower will be enough, because the craving isn't really for sugar. It's for relief. It's for comfort. It's for a moment of peace in a stressful life. And your brain has learned very effectively that sugar delivers those things, at least for a moment. Why quitting feels impossible. So now you understand the brain chemistry, the blood sugar cycle, the industrial manipulation, and the emotional layer. Put all of that together, and you start to understand why simply deciding to eat less sugar doesn't work. You're not fighting one thing, you're fighting 4 things at once, all of them operating largely below the level of conscious thought. But there's one more piece that makes quitting feel particularly brutal, and it's the withdrawal effect. When people significantly reduce their sugar intake, especially in the first 3 to 7 days, they experience symptoms that are genuinely uncomfortable. Headaches, fatigue, irritability, brain fog, strong cravings, difficulty concentrating, mood swings. These symptoms are real, they are physiological, and they are the direct result of your brain adjusting to lower dopamine stimulation. Your reward system, accustomed to regular sugar hits, is essentially complaining loudly about being deprived. Most people interpret these withdrawal symptoms as proof that they need sugar, or that a low-sugar diet isn't right for their body, and they go back to eating sugar before the brain has had time to recalibrate. In reality, if they had pushed through those first 5 to 7 days, the symptoms would have begun to fade, the cravings would have started to diminish, and the brain would have begun adjusting its dopamine sensitivity. The people who successfully reduce their sugar intake aren't people with extraordinary willpower. They're people who understood what withdrawal was, expected it, and didn't mistake it for a reason to stop. What the research actually tells us, the science on sugar and the brain has accelerated dramatically over the past decade, and some of the findings are genuinely remarkable. Researchers at the University of California, San Francisco, have described added sugar as a toxin, not in the alarmist social media sense, but in the precise pharmacological sense that it causes dose-dependent harm independent of the calories it provides. Long-term high sugar consumption has been linked not just to obesity and type 2 diabetes, but to inflammation throughout the body, damage to the lining of blood vessels, accelerated aging of cells, impaired cognitive function, and an increased risk of depression and anxiety. One study published in the British Journal of Psychiatry found that people who consumed the most processed food and sugar had a significantly higher incidence of depression 5 years later, even after controlling for other lifestyle factors. Your gut bacteria, which play a critical role in mental health through the gut-brain axis, are also profoundly disrupted by high sugar intake, with harmful bacteria that thrive on sugar crowding out the beneficial strains that support mood, immunity, and metabolic health. And perhaps most striking of all is research on the brain's response to sugar over time. Repeated exposure doesn't produce lasting satisfaction, it produces tolerance. The same amount of sugar that gave you a dopamine hit 6 months ago gives you a smaller hit today, so you need more. More chocolate, more sugar in your coffee, sweeter snacks to feel the same level of pleasure. This is the textbook definition of addiction, and it happens quietly, over years, without most people ever noticing. Part 7. What you can actually do. Understanding the mechanism is the first step, and it's more powerful than most people realize. When a craving hits and you understand that what you're feeling is a dopamine withdrawal signal, a cortisol spike, or a blood sugar crash, and not a genuine need for sugar, it creates a small but crucial gap between the impulse and the action. That gap is where change happens. The single most effective thing you can do to start breaking the cycle is to stabilize your blood sugar. This means eating meals built around protein, healthy fats, and fiber. Foods that break down slowly and provide sustained energy without triggering dramatic insulin spikes. When your blood sugar stays stable throughout the day, the urgent, desperate cravings that come from crashes begin to diminish significantly. This is not about eating less. It's about eating in a way that stops your body from manufacturing cravings every few hours. The second most effective change is to tackle the emotional layer honestly. Ask yourself, when you reach for something sweet, what you're actually looking for. Are you stressed, bored, lonely, tired? Identifying the real trigger doesn't make the craving disappear, but it gives you the opportunity to respond to the actual need. Rest, connection, movement, a brief break, rather than masking it with sugar that will only make the underlying state worse. Crowding out sugar with genuinely satisfying food is more effective than trying to eliminate it through restriction alone. Restriction triggers scarcity, which intensifies craving. When your meals are filling, satisfying, and genuinely nourishing, the psychological pull of sugar weakens over time because your body stops operating in a state of constant deficit. And finally, give yourself the grace to understand that this is a process measured in weeks and months, not days. Your brain's dopamine system took years to adapt to high sugar input. It will take real, consistent time to recalibrate. Setbacks are not failures. They are part of the process. Every day you understand more clearly what's happening in your body, and every day the mechanism of addiction becomes a little less invisible, you are making progress, even when it doesn't feel like it. We've covered a lot of ground today, and if there's one thing I want you to take away from this video, it's this. The struggle you've had with sugar is not a personal failing. It is a predictable response to a system that was designed, from multiple directions, to trap you. The brain chemistry, the blood sugar cycle, the industrial engineering, the emotional wiring, none of these are things you chose. But understanding them is something you can do, and understanding them is genuinely powerful. If this video helped you see your relationship with sugar differently, I'm asking you to do 3 things right now. Share this video with one person who needs to hear it, a friend, a family member, someone in your life who's been stuck in the same cycle and blaming themselves for it. Drop a comment below and tell me which part of this hit closest to home for you. Was it the brain chemistry, the blood sugar crash, the emotional eating? I read every comment, and your response genuinely helps shape what I cover next. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do it now and hit the notification bell. Every single week we're putting out content like this because you deserve real, honest, science-backed information about your body and your health. You are not broken. You are not weak. You are someone who now understands the game being played. And that changes everything. I'll see you in the next video.